Hey, Renter Retires, it's Adam Schroeder here with another episode, joined as usual by the founder and CEO of Rent Retirement, Zach Lemaster. And we're pleased to be joined today by Ryan Chaw. He is a founder of the newbie real estate investing group, also a pharmacist, but focusing on the real estate. So Ryan, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for inviting me on the show.
Absolutely. So, newbie real estate investing, we want to know, what was your first real estate investment? When did you officially become a real estate newbie?
Yeah, so I graduated as a pharmacist back in 2016. I bought my very first investment about a year later because I was just working a ton of overtime. I invested all the money I accumulated into that first property. It was at my alma mater college where I went to pharmacy school, and I just rented out by the bedroom and found that I can basically double the amount of rental income I could get. And I just kept doing that. And I bought one property each year until around the seventh year. I sold the very first property I had bought and then expanded out of state. And now I have 15 rentals from there. And they're all rent by the room, student housing. Each house makes anywhere from $1,500 per month in cash flow all the way up to my highest one making about $4,500 per month in cash flow.
Nice. I saw on your website as I was reading through it that you were really inspired by, I believe it was your grandfather.
Yeah,
when it came to real estate. Can you talk a little bit about, to the people who don't necessarily have somebody growing up that they looked towards as kind of an inspiration for real estate, and kind of how you think they might be able to find people who can inspire them or can give them the confidence they need to invest in real estate?
Yeah, well, you can just listen to this show. There's also, I also read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and that really, I had, some fire before, but when I read that, it added fuel to the fire, right? And so I was like, man, I really got to make this happen. And he goes over this concept that wealthy people, they just do different things than the, middle class or lower class or whatnot, because what they do is they buy assets, things that put money in your pocket without you having to trade your time for it. And it's such a game changer, because every time you want to splurge on something, every time you want to go on this fancy vacation, you don't feel as guilty about how many hours you put in to make that money. Because that money comes in more passively, and you dissociate your time from your money made. That is.
Ryan, I love that story, and thank you for sharing that with us. I think a lot of us can relate to what we call the Purple Bible, going back to Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and some of the concepts, and just mainly it's really conceptual, right, about how to think about money, and just that one thing of changing your mindset about how to think about earning money, investing money, and buying things that you necessarily want, buy assets that pay for your liabilities. I think that's a game changer, and that's where it starts for a lot of us. Are you still a practicing pharmacist?
No, I retired in August of last year after working about 8 years as a pharmacist. I set a date that I was like, okay, by this day, I'll probably have replaced my pharmacist income. And once I do that, I'm going to retire, no questions asked, right? So I, met that goal. I replaced the pharmacist salary, and so I retired.
I love that. And yeah, that's perfect. That's very similar to my background. My wife and I are both optometrists by education, and did a very similar path. I mean, I love your story because it's very relatable for many people that may be working. And I don't know if you necessarily retired because you disliked your job, or it was just a matter that was your financial goal. But I mean, regardless of that, you follow this path where you said you bought one rental a year for 7 years, and then you started investing out of state. I mean, this is almost the exact same thing that we did, where we invested locally. We didn't rent out per room. I think that's very interesting and a creative way to increase the cash flow on your properties. But I mean, we just consistently bought a property or multiple properties every single year, slowly. And over the course of a few years, we replaced our income. And then also we started investing out of state, because that's where we got really better opportunity. I guess we could tap into other markets. Let's talk about that. Well, and just to follow up on that, I think that the simple fact, what you are a perfect example of, is the fact that if you stay dedicated to investing, It doesn't happen overnight, but you can create financial freedom within a relatively short period of time, replacing even a professional income. So that's awesome, and thank you for sharing that. Let's talk about your transition to start to invest out of state.
Yeah.
What was the decision behind that, and how did that process initially go? Because a lot of our audience are people that want to invest across the country, and we try to make that accessible for them. But there's a lot of obstacles, right? Tapping in different markets. So let's hear about your mindset in that transition.
Yeah, it's just like at the beginning where there's a fear barrier in your mind, right? But the only way to get past that analysis paralysis stage is that you just got to get started. So that was the same thing at the very beginning. I did not know anything about real estate. I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have anybody really except myself. And so and then my grandpa, of course, did it. I knew he was successful. I didn't really know much from what he did, though. I didn't get to talk to him about it, unfortunately, before he passed. But yeah, just getting started. And I knew that if I invested out of state, the world would be my oyster, right? That's the saying, right? There's so much opportunity out there and so many different cities you can invest in. Why not allow yourself that opportunity to explore all those different cities? So yeah, I just got started. I found a deal. I was just looking through Zillow at random cities, honestly, and I came upon this property that was close to a very top college. And that's what I do is I invest near top colleges, and then I rent out to very high quality college students. Most of these students are graduate students, like pharmacy degree, doctorate of dentistry, MD, nursing, engineering, JD, MBA, those types of degrees. And so they're really focused on their studies. So I found this one near a top medical college, and I was like, okay, I gotta get it because it's only $200,000 price point, and I can get 6 bedrooms in there. And it looks like the rents that were supported was about $600 to $700 per room. And so every time I bought a house that I can turn into 6 bedrooms, it'll be $600 per room times 6 bedrooms. So it's about $3,600, $3,700. So that first one I bought, the mortgage was $1,190 per month, and then my rental income was $3,750 per month. So the cash flow was about $2,500. My down payment was about $43,000. So for me, it's like kind of a game changer in terms of cash flow. So I was like, I gotta do this, right? In California, I still cash flow, but it's more like $1,000, $1,500, maybe $2,000 a month, depending on where your interest rates are.
On a much more expensive house, right?
Yeah, exactly. But investing out of state, I could buy these houses in the $200,000 or $300,000 range and make $2,500 to $3,500 per month in cash flow. Like I said, was $4,500.
No, that's crazy. And so would this be considered co-living? Is this kind of, you're in the co-living space?
Yeah, essentially. So I rent to students, I rent to like professionals, medical workers, people who are doing their residencies or fellowships, because those people usually stay about 2 or 3 years. So yeah, that's kind of been my market.
And what would be the long-term rent on that same property, that $200,000 property? You know what it would rent out for long-term?
Yeah, so, we got the appraisal report and everything, and it's anywhere from $1,500 to $1,700 versus $3,700 was what I got. So
you're more than doubling the rent.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So, this is something that's very unique, and you are self-managing those, right?
So now I have a team because I can afford to hire out for that. So yeah, I have some VAs, virtual assistants, based in the Philippines to take care of like the bookkeeping, to take care of even the marketing and management processes. So yeah, it's been great.
I love that.
Yeah. How are you marketing these? If you're talking about students, a lot of times if you're marketing to students, I'm thinking like you're going down to, campus and putting stuff up there, but that's going to lead to a lot of people applying that you have no interest in, because one of the things that I think about when I hear student housing is, I don't know, we're going to call them tenants, perhaps like myself, who have a good time at their place and maybe don't leave it in, whenever I was 19, I didn't necessarily leave places in the best of conditions whenever I left. So how are you vetting and finding the right people?
Yeah, so I use something I created. It's called the Prime method. P stands for placement of ads. So you want to place your ads in front of the ideal tenant. So for me, it's college students, grad students. And so I really aim for like these top-notch colleges, used to be high SAT scores, well-rounded students, maybe more like not Ivy League necessarily, but definitely top-tier type colleges. And then I'll get right in front of their faces. So like Facebook groups, for example, Facebook housing groups, ULoop, University Loop, that is a site dedicated specifically for college town housing. Apartments.com, there's a lot of places there I'll place the ads. R stands for reviewing social media. So I will look through their Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever is out there on them to see kind of what type of tenant they are. And then I stands for identifying the type of tenant. So are they from at least their photos and everything? Are they kind of a party type tenant? Do you see any alcohol, smoking, drugs, that type of stuff? Or, a lot of raves and whatnot. And so I can kind of tell from there. And then M stands for measuring responsiveness. The more responsive they are, meaning they're filling out the paperwork, they're getting you their proof of income, they're responding quickly, and they're, addressing you as like, thank you, Mr. Chaw, or, I really appreciate this opportunity versus saying like, yo, dog, I want a place to stay or something like this, right? So I look at those things. And then E stands for ensuring proof of income. So usually it's the parents paying the rent, but you want
put
to
them on the lease.
Have enough savings.
Your parents on the lease.
Yeah, and then I'll have the parent co-sign the lease, exactly. And so I will get the bank statements from the parents, maybe a credit score. If not, it might be the student taking out like student loans. They have financial aid. They have a stipend if they're doing research. So these students, they have plenty of ways to pay the rent. And typically I also collect first plus last month rent upfront and the security deposit. So it's basically like 3 months worth of rent upfront, so I can make sure like I'm not going to have a tenant who's not going to pay, or a tenant who can afford the rent, essentially.
Yeah, that's a great process to follow. Thank you for sharing that with us. Some things that come to mind for me is, and I know this is very state regulated and independent, but just being conscious of like fair housing laws. In some places, you cannot be very selective on who you choose. Like if you have your set qualification criteria for a tenant, you kind of have to rent to the first person that meets all that criteria. So I guess in your case, you could be very intentional. And this is like the public way of showcasing. Obviously, you can make some decisions on your own on, hey, if this person's Facebook shows a bunch of things that I don't necessarily want in my house, you can make that decision. But just at least something to be conscious of. Have you encountered anything with that, or have you thought about like just fair housing laws, making sure?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you definitely have to be aware of them. To the best of my knowledge, it's not discriminatory to make it students only. You can even have it so most college students, they only want to stay with other college students. So you could say something along the lines of, the other students at the house are all college students. They prefer to stay with only other college students. So in that case, it's not really you like setting this. But even so, like there's not a specific discriminatory law to say students only. Now, you can't discriminate based off of age. You can't discriminate based off of family status. So if they have children, you can't discriminate based off sex. You can't say like females only or male only house, right? But like I said, let's say you have somebody from India, for example, and their culture, most Indian culture, for the females, they can't stay with other males, or they prefer not to, right, until they're married. So for those cultural things, you could say, well, the others, they wanted to keep it all female household. So I'm trying to accommodate them. And a lot of times what I do is if they do want to have an all female household, I will put all the females in that house, and then everyone else into the other different options that I have, because I have multiple different rentals available. And people understand. I've never had anyone actually complain about that. In fact, most people, once you say as college students, in their head, they're like, oh, I don't want to stay with a bunch of college kids. I don't want to stay with 5 other college kids, So they kind of already say, oh, no, that's not really what I was looking for. Because we only rent out the rooms. We don't rent out the whole house. So they will always be living with somebody else.
So what is your criteria then? Do you have to get like at least a 5-bedroom, like you were saying? Or what are whenever you're going in and actually evaluating the homes, what kind of housing will you just say absolutely not?
Yeah, so I've turned 3-bedroom houses into 6-bedroom houses quite frequently. But basically, it comes down to the rule of 300. I take the square footage and I divide by 300, and that tells me how many bedrooms I can have at the house. So if I have a 1,500 square foot house, divide that by 300, that means I could get 5 people in there. If it's 1,800 square foot or more, I could probably get 6 bedrooms in it, because 1,800 divided by 300 is 6 bedrooms.
Now, is that your own rule, or is that a regulation thing locally?
No, yeah, it's my own rule, actually.
Yeah.
But I've found it to be pretty true for almost all the cases. How there are exceptions. So if you do have like a 1,500 square house, sometimes you can get that into a 6-bedroom. It just depends on the layout of the house, because they need to be able to access the whole house, right? But they also, you also need to put in your bedroom. So it just, again, it depends on the layout. But yeah, that's what I typically look for. I look for places that are within a 5 to 7 minute drive to campus. And of course, I look in safe neighborhoods as well. So I will do research on Reddit to see what, and you could just type in Reddit off-campus housing, best places to live. And there will be a ton of like forums and posts about, hey, this is where you should stay if you're a student. So if I buy in those markets, that's basically what students are talking about through the grapevine. If they hear that I'm in that specific neighborhood, like Little Italy or whatever, then they're going to go like, okay, yeah, your house is in that neighborhood. I want to stay there.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I would say if you're considering like the co-living aspect, I know, and this is different state regulations too, just be conscious of occupancy limits as well. Yep. Sometimes people have come into issues in different parts of the country where you're only allowed to have so many unrelated people under one roof. But this is a very interesting way that you could potentially, increase cash flow quite a bit. And I think I like the idea of renting out to professional type of students. They're obviously probably a better type of tenant than 19-year-old Adam who's living it up in college. So and for anyone that's interested, I mean, we have a lot of new construction properties in college towns, Tuscaloosa, where the U of A is at. I mean, there's a lot of different options that are very accessible to college towns and close to the campus. So that might be something of interest to you. Talk to us, Ryan, a little bit about where you're at now and like what's the next step for you. So you recently retired from your career as a pharmacist, which is fantastic. You're out there educating and helping people. What's next for you?
Yeah, well, my goal is to get to 100 student rentals provided, student and professional renting, because I think affordability has definitely been a big problem in the states that and the cities that I invest in. There's a huge amount of housing demand, and there's literally not enough like rooms and houses available for the amount of people in the city. So I think this is the next step, co-living. For a lot of people, I'm definitely seeing a trend, especially in California. But yeah, I would say, that's kind of the goal, to hit 100 properties, and each one of them cash flowing about $2,000, $2,500, up to $4,500 per month. I think it's a very exciting goal for me. And, I love providing for students and making it the best experience for them as well.
How do you do that? How do you provide for a best experience for a college student? There are certain like little nuggets of knowledge you could leave for people on how to set them up for success if this is something they want to do, or things that really appeal to college students beyond just like location?
Yeah, so having a quiet study environment is really important. I mean, I have a study desk in every room. I provide all the furnishings so they don't have to worry about it. The idea is that basically you provide everything for them, so they only need to worry about their studying. So sometimes I even provide like extra large fridges or mini fridges. Just think about what a student wants, right? And maybe an extra washer and dryer because they have a couple students in that place. I might even do quarterly maid cleaning. So basically a whole house clean every 3 months or so. So, I'm setting that up for some of my properties. There's if they stay there for 2 years, we also give out AirPods or Beats headsets just as a thank you. So there's little things that you can do that, what would students want, right? Another thing I'm thinking of setting up is I was thinking of creating a Google Drive and then having the students upload their notes to that Google Drive when they leave, so that the next student, we can have the database of all the past student notes, exams, whatever, study materials, right? So that they can kind of go through those as a student resource.
That's huge. That's a very creative way. I think that's that additional value add. But it's almost like you are creating a community.
Exactly.
And you can tap it. I think that's attractive for student housing as well, especially in the professional space. Like, hey, you can tap in if you're coming from out of state, or like you're coming into a new environment where you don't know anybody. And if you can create almost like a community and a little bit of a culture around the houses, like that could be very attractive to people that are attending, graduate programs. I have two other questions for you. I want to ask them both so I don't forget. One would be around furnishing, and this would be applicable to people that are doing short-term, mid-term rentals, co-living, where you're furnishing a house. I want to talk about that. I also want to talk about the leasing structure, because in this environment, are you signing a lease with each individual person? Maybe answer that one first, and then we can talk about furnishing. Is it a master lease, or each person has a lease?
Yeah, so it depends. If they have, if there's a group of 6 friends moving in, then I might have a master lease and all of them will sign that one master lease. That's just because they're all friends. They trust each other. Now, if you have individuals moving in and they don't know each other, it's better to have individual leases because, they may not trust each other as much. Plus, they might be coming in on a different move-in date. So I do mostly individual leases, and you have to be careful with that as well. Like if you invest, like you were mentioning with the occupancy limits, what I had to do was do a change of use permit for some of my houses to be a rooming house instead of, or rooming/boarding house instead of a normal single family home. So just check with your, local real estate attorney about how to do the leasing process, how that works. But for me, I want to make sure I'm in compliance. So doing something like a change of use to a rooming house might be what I need to do.
Perfect. That's exactly, I think, the key to look into, just what is required there. Do you have a list of like house rules as well in your lease
Yes,
like quiet hours or things like that? Or
yeah, exactly. So quiet hours is like 11 p.m. and after. We have signs posted to not leave any dirty dishes in the sink. That's probably the most contentious issue if I were to pick one. So, we have a sign that says no dirty dishes in the sink, put it in the dishwasher, and, start a load eventually. But as long as it's not in the sink, right? Because it smells and annoys people, all of that.
College kids. And how about furnishing? How does furnishing work?
Yeah. So I provide bed, mattress, bed frame, headboard. I provide a study desk. I provide study chair, nightstand, drawers and closets, right? I want to, especially the rooms that I created, right? I need to have like some sort of closet. It doesn't have to be an official built-in closet, but a standing closet is fine. And you can find a lot of them on Amazon or Walmart. So I provide all of that for the students. Plus the common area, of course, there's like a dining table, couch, some chairs, dining chairs.
So are you using a specific company to furnish this, or are you just kind of like piecing it together from Wayfair, Amazon, all the things, and then like, because you're especially for the ones out of state, how are you furnishing those, and what is like an expected cost to furnish?
Yeah, I've done both. So Facebook Marketplace is a really good place to find refurbished furniture in general, and for a really cheap price. And some people are just giving out free stuff, like free furniture, because they're just like trying to get rid of it, right? Or they just don't have enough room for it. So yeah, you could go to Facebook Marketplace, but if you do out of state, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it unless you have like a handyman who can do it. So I did it before where I had a handyman. Basically, he would just run around and collect furniture. I would send him the links, right? But the other way to do it is just to order from Amazon, Walmart, Target, Wayfair, sometimes Home Depot. Basically, those are my go-tos. And I will just have it all shipped so it arrives on one day. And then I'll have the handyman go in and set up all the furniture on that. It usually takes a day to a day and a half to set up all the furniture. But yeah, I pay them whatever they're asking for, which usually isn't too bad. It's maybe $25 to $50 an hour or something like that.
What's the total cost to furnish the house though? And there are companies that we can recommend as well that will they will design and furnish and deliver and install. They're probably more expensive than doing it the way that Ryan is talking about, but there are those services if you need them as well. But what are your typical costs, Ryan?
Yeah, so it depends on it really depends on the mattress cost, because that's the biggest expense. So mattresses can be anywhere from just $300 all the way up to like $800 for a new mattress, that is, for a full-size bed. So $300 to $800. So if I'm furnishing like 6 bedrooms and I do the high-end mattress, that might be more like $4,800. But if I'm doing like a $300 per mattress, and that's only $1,800, right? So overall, you can probably furnish the whole house within a budget of about $4,000, $5,000. Upper end, it might be like $8,000 or something. It just really depends. And if you do the Facebook Marketplace strategy I was talking about, I mean, you could probably furnish the house for as cheap as like $2,500 or $3,000, because some people, again, are giving out free furnitures. But, do you really want to go through all the different links out there, all the different posts out there and try to find a mattress for each room? And, it just gets to be a lot of work, right? Might not be worth it.
And the final question I have for you here is, you talk about converting rooms, adding an extra washer dryer. I assume, most of these are probably, only have 1 or 2 bathrooms, and with 6, 7 people, that's not really going to work for the most part, I would think. So talk a little bit about kind of how much of an initial investment are people actually needing for this? And then also, if you could tell people kind of where to find you, who exactly you're helping serve, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, sure, of course. So you always want to maintain a 3-person to 1 bathroom ratio. So usually if I do have a private bathroom, I will try to open it up to the rest of the house so we have shared bathrooms. So with 2 bathrooms, you can get up to 6 people. That is 2 shared bathrooms, because that's maintaining a 3-person to 1 bathroom ratio. And you want to maintain that at all times. Sometimes I will have a private bathroom and I'll put a couple in that master bedroom that has that private bathroom so that those 2 can share that bathroom. So those are some strategies I've used. But yeah, you really want to make sure it's comfortable for people. So make sure you have at least 2 bathrooms in general. And for the cost to convert like a half bath to a full bath, it could be anywhere from like $5,000 to $8,000. It's usually not too much, because you're just adding a shower pan, putting in some pipes, the drainage pipe, and then obviously the water pipe. So it's usually not too expensive. And then to put up the walls for the bedrooms, it's just framing and drywall. So it costs anywhere from as low as $1,500 all the way up to maybe $3,000 or so maximum. So most of these projects, I can get all the renovations and all the furnishings in for less than $8,000, I would say $8,000 to $10,000, typical price range. And then the down payment will be a 20% down. And if you want to reach me and are very interested in the student housing strategy to, of course, double your rental income, you can connect with me at www.newbierealestateinvesting.com/guide. That's www.newbierealestateinvesting.com/guide. And newbie is spelled NEWBIE.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We will have that link in the show notes for anybody who's listening and wants to get that guide. In case you're driving on the road, don't go there right now. Do it whenever you click on the show notes later. Ryan, I really appreciate the time you spent joining us today and educating on this topic. It is something we have not talked about before, so I think a lot of people are going to find it educational. For everybody else, if you want to see the inventory we have, and also, like Zach said, we have some stuff in Tuscaloosa around the university area, so it might be of interest to somebody following Ryan's advice. You can head on over to renttoretirement.com. That's renttoretirement.com. Set up time to talk with us, check out the inventory. And as always, if you have any questions that you want us to answer in future episodes, please send them to podcast@renttoretirement.com. That's podcast@renttoretirement.com. Really appreciate the time you spent educating yourselves today. Talk to you on the next episode.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for watching the Rent to Retirement YouTube channel. Check out some of our other videos, like this one, or this one here.